Good Erev Shabbos, everyone. Erev Shabbos, Parshas Yisro. We have in this week's Parsha, Matan Torah, Kabbalah Torah. And I have a question, like we do every week. I have a question for you to ask at your Shabbos table, get everyone engaged, get everyone involved in an interesting discussion relevant to the Torah portion that we're learning this week. So in Perek Yud Tes, in Pasuk Yud Zayin, it says the following: Vayotzi Moshe es-ha'am likras elokim min ha'machane. Moshe Rabbeinu brought everyone, the Jewish people, from the camp to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Vayitziyatzvu betachtis hahar, and they stood at the bottom of the mountain. Famous medrash that Rashi brings says as follows: betachtis hahar. The Pashup shot is by the foot of the mountain. The medrash says that the shenitla shahar mim koimoi, the mountain was uprooted from its place. The nichba aleihim kigigis. Gemara in Shabbos Daf Peiches. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu hung the mountain over the heads of the Jewish people and said, if you accept the Torah, it's highly recommended, great idea. If not, sham tehek furas. If you don't, I'm going to drop the mountain on your head. And that'll be your grave. So the question is, what kind of Kabbalah is that? What kind of acceptance? Ask your children, ask your spouse. What kind of acceptance is that you point the gun at someone and say, I want you to agree that you're going to, give me a ride every day to work. And I'll come to your house every morning with a gun. And if not, I'm going to kill you. So, yeah, sure. Is that a true acceptance? They're being forced. It's an oinus. It's an oinus. It's not a chash of a thing that they're being coerced, more than coerced. Mamish being forced. That's the question to ask the Shabbos table. How do you understand what's the big thing? And we always talk about Kabbalah Torah and it's Gavaldik, but the whole thing was an oinus. It was a setup. It was a force. That's the question. The Meshech Chochmah says as follows, and others say this as well. He quotes the Gemara in Shabbos and the Lamed Shekafel and Har Kigigis. Pirush, what does that mean? That Hashem held the mountain over their head. Sheher lahem kavod Hashem b'haketz of Isgalus Niflo. Hashem showed them Himself to whatever extent it's possible for a human being to see Hashem. Ad ki mamish batla b'chirasim hativi, until they lost their free choice. The past month we've been discussing extensively, both in these shurim and in the Ramban shur after davening. B'chira chavshis. Hashem took away paras b'chira chavshis. What is b'chira chavshis? So by showing them Hashem Himself, by showing Himself to them, He took away their bechira, their natural choice. They died, as Chazal tell us, from that understanding of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. It wasn't that Hashem put a gun to their head, so to speak. Hashem showed Himself to them in a way that they became like angels. It was so obvious. The entire creation is dependent on Kabbalah Torah, that it was obvious they're going to keep the mitzvahs. That's what happened. So it wasn't an outside force coercing them. It was explaining to them what's going on, showing them what reality really is. And then it's obvious, it's pashut that Hashem is the one, and we have to listen to the Torah. Says the Meshech Chochmah, we find in two other places areas of halacha where a person must do it with free will, and if you force him to do it, it's considered like he's doing it with free will. Person must bring a korban if he's Mechal Shabbos by accident. The Gemara is discussing Masech Shabbos in the 7th parak that you have to bring a korban. One has to bring a korban. And if he doesn't want to, we can force him to do it until he says, fine, I'll do it. They're applying pressure to him. However, they do that in the confines of Allah, in the confines of the law. It could be financial pressure, other pressure. He says, fine, I'll do it. That's called, it's not under duress. That is called, he's doing it from his free will. And the famous Rambam, Hilchos Gerushin, a recalcitrant husband, does not want to give a get to his wife. We apply coercion until he says, fine, I'll do it. So why isn't that not called a get ma'us? That should be a forced get. The Rambam says there's a nitzoit, there's a little spark inside all of us that knows the right thing is the Torah. We all know the right thing is the Torah. It's just that we have this Yetzer Hara. We should talk for Yitzro Hara, Levatal Mitzvah, and the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination is telling us not to do the mitzvah or to do the Aveira. and he is coerced until the Yetzer Hara is subdued, and then the Jews' true feelings come through. So says the Moshe Chachma, the way we understand their acceptance at Matan Torah, the way we understand our approach to mitzvahs, and when we chas v'shalom do averos, is as follows. If we knew the truth, if we had that in front of our eyes, it's pashut to keep the Torah mitzvahs. That's pashut. And that's what happened that day in Matan Torah. That's the answer to our question, that it wasn't a coercion, a gun to the head. Hashem showed himself so clearly to the Jewish people that it was obvious to them that's the right thing. Torah is the only thing. So too today, so we don't see things like that. We don't have a Matan Torah happening on a consistent basis. It's a one-time thing. So we have a Yetzer Hara, and we ourselves are wired to keep all the Torah. Not even that it's to win the battle against not wanting to do the mitzvah or holding oneself back from the Aveira. We naturally want to keep the mitzvahs. We naturally want to stay away from the Aveiras. But we have this thing called the evil inclination, and it confuses us. And sometimes with an outside stimulus, it's able to subdue the Yetzer Hara, and then our true feelings come through. When I was learning in the Mir Yeshiva, I would go to Musar Shmuzin by Rabbi Yaakov Moshe Katz, Shlita, on Friday morning, and he said a number of times over the course of those number of years that I went to those Shmuzin that a Jew should never say, I sinned. Never say, I did an Aveira. You say, something made me sin. A Yid doesn't do an Aveira. A Yid has that kaflim harkagigas inside. He's in tune with the Torah, but there are outside things that make me sin. And our avoida is to get rid of that, to connect to Torah and mitzvahs in a way that we're going to naturally want to follow, because naturally we're wired to follow it. Just this Yetzer Hara gets involved. Our avoida is not to have that internal battle and then win, and then I come to shul and I put on tefillin, and then I'm mechabed my parents. I give the tzedakah. The ideal in Yiddishkeit is not to have the battle and then win, although it is, when the battle comes, you have to try to be nisgaber and win. The ideal avodas Hashem is to connect to Torah and mitzvahs in a way that I naturally am pulled towards it. That's exactly what the Orchos Tzadikim says in the Shar HaZrizos when he discusses Zrizos. We say alacrity or eagerness, however you define it in English. He says that the avoid of Zrizos, the beginning of the Shar, that gate, Zrizos is when a person takes all his other thoughts and gets rid of them, the toifis machshav achas, and he grabs onto one thought, one focus, and he's mizaris in that, he'll be successful. Avram Avinu took out from himself his love for his child, for Yitzchak, and he focused on the Abbas Hashem, and then Mimela, it was easy for him to do the Akedas Yitzchak. The Akedas Yitzchak for Avram Avinu wasn't a battle every step of the way, as we see. When Hashem told him, don't shechten, he said, no, I want to. And when he shechted the animal that he shechted, he did it as if it was my son. Why? Because he wasn't fighting with his Yetzer Hara b'shas ma'isa. He got himself in tune with the Ratzon Hashem, with the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu beforehand, and then Mimele he wanted to do it, and he did it b'simcha. That's our avodah. That which happened to Klal Yisrael on that day of Matan Torah, where they were shown the true reality, and they naturally gravitated towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu, towards Torah mitzvahs. That's our avodah every day, every second, every moment of our lives. It's not to have the battle and hopefully win. It's to avoid the battle. It's to realize that really, I don't sin, things make me sin. I am naturally in tune with the Torah, and the avodah is with pikchas, it requires street smarts to figure out, how do I connect to tefillah so that it's not a battle every morning getting out of bed? How do I connect to giving meiser so it's not a battle every month or whatever, however often it is, to write out the check? How do I connect to kibbut ava'im, that I'm running to help my parents? That's the avodah. That's the nakuda. We should all be zeichen to incorporate this idea, realizing that it's not an oinus, it's not duress. If anything, that is our true selves, and that is our true bechira chavshus. Wishing everyone a wonderful Shabbos.